Hello everyone, welcome to the Blackwake closed alpha test for May 2016. This build was made available on Steam to backers of the project on Kickstarter, and the first closed alpha test ran for approximately 4 days at the start of the month. I played a fair amount of this during that time and have quite a few things to say about it. But in this first impressions video, I am just going to be covering the very basic mechanics of the game, and then we'll be doing a follow-up at some point explaining some of the other mechanics which I don't cover. So what is Blackwake? Well, it's a team-based online multiplayer game set in the golden age of sail, so 17th and 18th century sailing ships. It's British Navy versus pirates, and there are different sizes of ships available. There's a single-masted cutter, which is the ship which I am playing on in this video, going up to a large triple-masted galleon with multiple decks and potentially 20 versus 20 teams, things like that, so very, very large scale. It's primarily a first-person shooter perspective, but with strategy hybrid elements, so you have to work together as a crew to dominate the other team, and it's very, very frantic, very funny, very chaotic. And before we go into the footage of the game which I've captured, I do need to make you guys aware of the watermark in the top right corner of the screen. The developers have requested that I point that out specifically in order that I can make this video. It's not fair on them for me not to point it out, considering that while most of the gameplay systems are fully functional, or at least implemented in some way, a lot of the models and character animations and things like that are placeholder. And so I do need to make it very clear to you guys, this is an alpha build. It's not going to look necessarily as rudimentary as this when it hits 1.0. So I do have to say, actually, on that subject, I much prefer it this way round, that the gameplay is functional but the presentation visually is incomplete, considering that a lot of games in early access these days tend to sort of trick you into buying into the project when there isn't really much of a game there, just almost a graphical showcase and not much else. So anyway, what I've done here is I've stitched together footage of a few different games that I played, each showing off different types of things that can happen when you play Blackwake. And so, without further ado, let's go into the first match which I played. Not the first match which I played, the first match which I'm going to show you guys. Here we go. So at the start of the game you pick your loadout, you pick primary and secondary weapons, you pick other item slots which you can have holding things like grenades, healing potions, that type of thing. And then the voting begins. You see a captain has been elected by a voting system, and the ship can't be operated, can't be steered or moved until there is a captain. That serves several purposes. First of all, it allows the crew to load up the guns, which you can see I'm doing here. In order to load one of the cannon, you have to load it with powder, then ram the powder with a ramrod, put in the shot, and then finally you need to equip an ignition stick and push the cannon. And the captain here has ordered that the cannon be, the portside cannon, be loaded with grappling hooks. So that's why I fired the cannon into the blue there, because I'd already put normal round shot in there. So I'm trying to reload the cannon here, but that basically went really badly wrong because the other ship was already upon us here. And this was when I think this was probably the second game I played, and the first game which I played from the beginning of the match rather than joining partway through. So I really didn't know what I was doing here. And so once that embarrassing situation had occurred, I decided that I was going to take the role of a sort of deckhand swabby and basically repair the ship and perform maintenance tasks while other crew members addressed the cannon. And the sails needed repairing here, so I tried to climb on the rigging and I fell overboard. Luckily the game features a suicide button, which you can use at any time. So there we go. I killed myself, I was back on the ship. The sails needed repairing, so I this time more carefully, there we go, more carefully climbed the rigging and started to perform repairs on the sails. Now, when the ship gets damaged, you can get holes in the hull, which start to fill the ship with water. You can get holes in the sails, which give you a penalty on your sailing speed. And you can damage the ship's nose, like the sort of bow beam at the front of the ship here, where you can see which I'm going to repair. When the nose is damaged, it partly or entirely immobilizes the ship. When the nose is damaged, it can actually take several repair cycles to fix, and if it's fully damaged, then your ship is completely immobilized. Usually when you take a broadside from the enemy ship... that guy went flying. Usually when you take a broadside from the enemy ship, you will get a hull... you will get damage in the hull, basically. And you can repair those simply by locating where the hole is and repairing it. But what that does is it starts to fill the ship with water, and the ship will start to slowly sink. And when that happens, you will see water coming onto the deck. You see at the top of the screen there is an indicator which shows the state of the ship, and now that we have 3 holes, the ship's starting to take on water, it's starting to list. So I go and man the pump there. When you man the pump, it immobilizes your character for around 5 seconds, and it means that you can't use any other items or equipment during that time. Your character is devoted to pumping water out of the bilge, and that starts to slowly lift the ship back above the water. The game is over when one of a number of conditions are met. Usually, in my experience of losing matches in Blackwake, which is something that's happened to me a fair amount, it's just when you get overwhelmed and the crew is not working together in the way that they should be, and the ship just basically sinks below the surface of the water and you lose. The front of the ship also has these swivel guns, as you can see, which are small cannon. Not very useful at all for actually damaging the enemy ship, but good for picking off enemy crew members when the ship is close by you. And obviously the advantage of them being that you can steer. Here I managed to actually hit their ship with a broadside when our ship was partly underwater, so that was quite an interesting thing that happened there. The cannonball travelled under the surface of the sea and somehow hit the hull of their ship. So here, again, by this point in the match, it had basically just turned into a war of attrition between the two teams. We seemed equally matched in our lack of skill, I guess you could say. And every time a barrage of cannon fire or gunfire negatively affected our crew, we managed to pull it together just in time to either deal out the same or do another one. And so, in that way, it's actually somewhat of a realistic game, because actual naval battles were so kind of slow-paced. You know, sailing ships with primitive munitions technology, the battles would go on for a very long time. And sometimes, you know, a full day or even more than that of just circling one another, trying to get pot shots, performing repairs, and so on. And I got another broadside in there. That was just a lucky break. They were clipping around us very quickly, and at this point the ship was immobilized, or at least partly so, by damage to the nose of the ship. So they were basically running circles around us here. And there was somewhat of there was some consternation, shall we say, between the crew at this point. one of the crew members who had played a number of games before, I think, wasn't very happy about how the captain was approaching manoeuvres. He made that known to the crew. Oh, and at this point, I was in the rigging doing some sail repairs, and I went up to the crow's nest and confused one of the other crew who thought I was an enemy who had somehow managed to get on board and hide in the rigging. So that was quite interesting. So I jumped off just to show him that I wasn't a threat and proved that there is currently no fall damage in the game because I fell a very long way. At this point we had taken a pretty severe beating, and you can see there was a fire had broken out. When you get fire, you see this guy is dealing with it by throwing a bucket of water over it. There are water pails on the ship. Crazy physics there. Water pails on the ship which you can equip. And one of the main features of the game, and pretty much everything that you do, is how time-consuming any operation is. Loading and firing a cannon has huge delays. You can't just use the cannon and fire it unless it's one of the swivel guns. You have to go through the whole process. It's the same with the water pails. You only get one use, and you have to carry them to the fire, use them, and then go and get another one, and try and do that before the fire spreads. So what this does is it really encourages full sort of cooperation between crew members, full teamwork. If everyone's trying to do the same thing, or no one's working together, you just get overwhelmed. And so I was trying to really fulfill the role of maintenance as much as possible, because the other guys were basically far better marksmen than I am. So I was trying to man the pumps, perform the repairs as and when they appeared, and basically not get shot. But, oh, and obviously reloading the cannon when they needed to be reloaded. I found that the other crew members, when they were manning the cannon, were far better at it than me. So that was something. And I was trying to reload here when I should really have just been performing repairs. The captain was constantly calling for repairs at this point, so it was really just my bad. I was trying to get a good shot in there. And eventually the crew just kind of weren't really very synchronized. And obviously I was a big part of that as well, and we just got overwhelmed. And I managed to get a shot off there. I don't think it connected. No, I was just too late with that one. Just too late. Because there is a few seconds of delay from when you actually fire the cannon to when the cannonball leaves the nozzle. Here we were immobilized. They were just circling round us, and that was basically it. That was defeat. I was trying to mobilize the ship again, but we were taking on too much water, and eventually we just sank. So, as I say, there we go. Once the ship gets below the surface of the water to a certain degree, the game is over. Okay, in the next round, we were sailing in a storm, so you can see there are loads of different weather conditions available here. And they dramatically change the way the game works in a lot of ways. There are just sort of aesthetic weather changes, but in this case, it really changed the way that you can maneuver the ship. I was made captain at this point, so I was trying my level best to navigate in this storm, but it was just so difficult to steer the ship, and every time a wave crashes over the deck, it slows down the crew members and that kind of thing. So it was yeah, it was pretty tricky. And as you can see, when you're the captain, you can issue certain preset commands to the crew, which can be reload the guns, prepare the cannons on port or starboard side, prepare for us to ram the ship, and commanding people to grapple, load the cannons with grappling hooks and try and grapple the other ship, which obviously connects them together and lets you board, perform repairs, that kind of thing. I was finding it so difficult to sort of steer the ship properly that I just kept changing my tact, and that was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. It didn't help that we were outmanned on our team by more than twice. I mean, we had, including myself, the captain, 3 men on the ship. They had about 7. So we were doomed from the start, and it was just kind of... I was just having fun seeing how long we could hold off. You see there, we were rammed. And I was sure they were going to board, so I left the helm here to try and repel our boarders. And again, that was a huge mistake. It left me dead in the water. So I had to get back on the helm quickly. And then I just decided that we would just go for it. So I was trying to get back around here, get in line of the ship. They made a swift exit. I guess their nose or something might have been damaged from that collision and they wanted to perform some repairs, but like I say, they just had the manpower to get everything done and keep everything under control. When you only have 3 men on the ship and one of them is steering, that basically means you have 1 man to perform repairs, 1 man to load and fire the cannons, and whoever is available at the time to repel boarders and perform, you know, sort of general melee or shooting tasks here. So I decided that we would just go for it and ram their ship. So it was chasing them down for some time. They were trying to turn round for a broadside. I was left very, very vulnerable here by going at the side of their ship, having none of our cannons except the swivel guns available to actually fire at them. So it generally just wasn't going too well for me, and I am basically just a terrible captain in Blackwake. The full game, they are going to have a system in place where it shows the number of victories and defeats you have as captain. Here, this guy, when we collided, he got knocked off his own ship and managed to swim to our ship and get up on board before he got left behind by either. And you can see there some of the rudimentary melee combat, which they stress is very, very broken, very unfinished, not really working as intended at all. But we got several guys on board here, and yeah, I dealt with that really badly again. He was chasing me down with a cutlass, and I was just trying to reload my musket, which was a huge, huge, huge mistake. And once again, the ship was dead in the water here. I was getting really high ping on this match as well, which was giving huge lag in things like respawning, functions, firing weapons. The servers on this test were all in the US, or at least the ones I could connect to, and obviously I'm in the UK, so I was sometimes getting good connection speeds, but most of the time I was getting really, really high ping, and that was quite frustrating. But in general, the netcode does work very well. And here they were closing in again, going for a collision, and they were trying to board our ship and succeeding. So again, the simple problem was that this was a very good strategy on their part. They they basically rammed us, causing holes in our ship, and then using their vast amount of crew simply just took us out so that we didn't have time to repair the ship. And as you can see, the ship sank pretty quickly. We couldn't perform any repairs in time. That was basically it. And I managed to take a few guys down, but there we go. Game over. Okay, and the next one was performed at sunset, as you can see. And this one went on for a long time. I mean, I cut out a lot of it just for this footage, but it was probably upwards of half an hour, which was very cool. I really like things where the battles are so lengthy. I mean, I do love Sid Meier's Pirates and that kind of thing, but the battles last like 1 minute, and they also have a time limit on them, so they can't go on for more than a couple of minutes. Which is quite strange considering, you know, how these battles actually took place. Very, very slowly, very methodically, and were really just an endurance test. You can also see here how long it takes to reload the weapons in this game. Everything takes so long to operate. The pumps, the cannon, the weapons. It means that you need manpower and you need harmony. This battle went on a lot like the first one I showed you for a while, in that it was just a war of attrition between the two ships. They were basically equally matched in skill. But slowly but surely, we started to harmonise as a crew. And each one of us basically managed to calibrate what our strengths and weaknesses were, and work together in a way which was kind of... which worked in over the course of the match. So you can see what just happened there was that a new captain was elected because our current captain wasn't working the ship in a way which was beneficial to everyone else. And so using the voting system, the captain was replaced, and the second one was far better. Some collisions here. And I was trying to pick off some people with just general sniping, but I mean that does actually work a surprising amount. The guns are very, very accurate, which pays off for the incredible reload speeds. Bearing in mind these weapons are flintlocks, so in order to fire it, it's not just like a Garand rifle or something like that, where you just have to like cock the hammer in order to reload it. You have to put in charge, shot, then use a ramrod, and then prime a piece of flint, and then and then put powder into the powder chamber on the side of the gun, and then cock the hammer, and you can fire the weapon. That was just the way it was back then, so it's very, very cool to have to deal with it in this kind of intense environment. Here, I tried to perform repairs on the ship there because it was immobilised and I fell overboard. Luckily, because the ship was immobilised, I managed to climb up the rope back onto it. That is a good example of how the systems in the game work together to create situations which are interesting. And I can't stress that enough about this. It is amazingly entertaining, the things that can happen within a set of rules which in and of themselves are very, very simplistic. You can get things happening which constantly sort of surprise you as the player. And I was having a tremendous amount of fun just with the wacky situations which were occurring, even though I don't play hardly any online multiplayer games of any kind. I'm not especially competitive. I generally just prefer very, very challenging single player games. But I was having a blast with this, and it was really amusing, and I was getting into it and sort of very, very quickly improving as a player the more that I played. But I decided that for this first video I would just show you guys the first few matches that I played, because this is first impressions. I will be doing more impressions videos on this game as the tests run. Certainly of the huge galleon battles, which are definitely something to see. And the full game is also going to have battles with more than 2 ships. So real sort of cool like fleet maneuvers and that kind of thing. Really, really good. Anyway, by this point in the battle, we'd really just harmonised very, very well as a crew. The captain was really, really good at steering the ship in a way which was lining us up for easy cannon shots here, and they were just trying to ram us head on. Luckily, I got on the cannon here, and as you can see, so did everyone else. They got absolutely pummeled. I got a broadside straight on the nose before the collision, and that was very, very cool. And this was basically the beginning of the end for them. We were equally matched in numbers, but because we just basically at this point didn't let them perform the necessary repairs to their ship, and they were too busy trying to kind of focus on combat than focusing on like maintaining their position and maintaining their sort of I guess like paying attention to what they were actually doing. And yes, once again I tried to climb the rigging and I fell overboard, something which happens to me a hell of a lot, as you can tell. But finally, in the end, I don't know, I just had a really good feeling towards the end of this match, like it was basically just going to end really well for us. But how it did end was quite amusing. We were all ready to just absolutely bombard them and sink their ship, but in the end we just picked some of them off, and then the ships just sort of collided together. Here we go. We just went for a ram. They were coming back round to broadside us, and we just rammed them head on, picked off some of the crew, and the rest just fell overboard, leaving no crew on the ship, and that was it. Game over. We won. So yeah, that's Blackwake. Really, really feeling it. Very, very fun game. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and a comment, and I will see you in the next video. Either Blackwake or other videos on my channel for similar content. Thank you very much, guys. Take care and goodbye.